the European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights is peculiar in the sense that, apart from its mandate, it's focused mainly on civil society, very sensitive issue, and often small projects with a very small individual aspect. So it's actually quite important to highlight these elements. There is a very strong human touch in what we do. Our house is a big house with big projects, so it's a good complement to what the house does. It's also a very strong political complement. If you do a big work project with small human rights activity, you can complement in a right-based approach to development approach. So I think, yes, it's important. Then we do actually highlight what the colleagues does. We have success story line where delegation present regularly their project. All that can be found on the EIDHR.eu website. We also bring a focal point from delegation once a year in February, January, to sit together and discuss this kind of elements. So again, EIDHR.eu, you find most of the information. Some of them are packaged in a communication manner because we also share that with our member states and the European Parliament and civil society. This is where we can show the result in more communication terms and find some leverage in political element. But they are there, and we're also fully available for that. The unit DEFCO B1 has a network of within the unit of people that are there to face all the delegation requests, all the in-house directorate requests on this regard as well. If I summarize the added value of the EIDHR, I would say three things. First, it's complementary. It works in complementarity with other instruments. So we are more or less there to do what the other cannot do. Human rights and democracy are mainstream in all the other instruments. So we focus on the most difficult part, on how can we complement the work of our colleague in this regard. The second part is that part of the instruments, because we complement in the most difficult area of the matter, part of the instruments has more flexibility. We can be restricted in information level, we can have simplified procedure, more or less to protect the people we are working with or to protect ourselves. I'll give you an example, you don't work publicly if you are in Turkmenistan as you do if you are in Benin or Ghana. Then the third added value of the instrument is actually we are not a geographical instrument, we are worldwide. So we have a mandate to work everywhere except within the EU. There is some complexity when it gets to migration because this is in and out, but we work jointly with DG Home and Just on this issue. So we have a mandate to go everywhere. Of course, the United States doesn't need us in terms of project support for civil society on discrimination issue, but when you talk about such issue as death penalty, Japan, US, still apply death penalties. So for example, we have project on death penalty in the US because if the EU doesn't do it, nobody does it. It's a mixture. More or less, if you take the European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights, you can see a few blocks of activities. First, more or less, half of the instrument is managed directly by delegation. We give allocation to delegation, depending on their request, depending on the human rights situation of the country, depending on the absorption capacity. We do that for 7 years in the multi-annual framework, so more or less delegation know now what they have. They can always ask for more. They can new delegation that have not or request an allocation can still do it. It's flexible and evolving, but more or less it's give us a line. This money is implementing pending priorities that are determined by the delegation, very much linked to the human rights country strategy, but not exclusively. So more or less the delegation assess what are their priorities. We help them in working and seeing if they are completely in line with what the EU priorities are. And then they go through the normal procedural elements, mainly through call for proposal for civil society, but there is other element. We can also do direct funding. We can also have targeted projects. We support the delegation in doing that. We also have a technical assistance facility to provide at certain moments where the workload is too tough, some technical support, either in terms of standards, but very much, and I think this is key in terms of reinforcement, we can send experts to reinforce delegation to help them assess call, identify priority, organize meeting with civil society. Also, delegation have specific allocation in the allocation to help them face these specific requests. So 10% of the country allocation is pocket money for delegation to face the administrative requests they have when they deliver on the EIDHR. Then again, any specific requests, please send them to us. We can always address and give more support. That's one part of the instrument. The other part of the instrument is managed directly by the HQ. This is mainly the R part of the instrument: crisis, human rights defender in danger or at risk, or global calls. This is managed directly by DevCo at the center. Most of the global calls target issue of global relevance. So, for example, death penalty, or the most difficult project. When a delegation cannot manage that because it is, first, there is no delegation, let's say Iran, or because there is a risk of danger for the delegation, because they might be seen by the partner country as a human rights activist. You can imagine the list of countries we're talking about. Then either the geographical department, either the human rights unit can take on board the management of those projects as a last resort solution to help the delegation in their, let's say, engagement with the partner country. Then the most difficult part of the instrument, we're talking about emergency issue or crisis. This is managed directly by us. So more or less we are providing the entire support for the delegation. What we still want is to have an interaction with other services and delegation to get their IDs, their visa, their veto eventually on those projects. So if tomorrow we receive an urgent request for human rights defender in a given country, either through the delegation, others through directly, and NGOs directly to us, we will interact with the delegation and provide the technical support and sometimes take care of the nasty part, the contractualization and the administrative elements.